أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So this is our third week, second week to third week that we have been studying the 11th word. And the 11th word's first paragraph was mentioning that if you want to understand a little about the talisman of the wisdom of the world and the riddle of man's creation and the mystery of the reality of the prescribed prayers, then consider this short comparison together with my own soul. So these were the three major things we are attempting to learn in the light of Surah Ash-Shams, by the sun and its glorious splendor, by the moon as it follows it, by the day as it shows the sun's glory, by the night as it conceals it, by the firmament and its wonderful structure, by the earth and its wide expanse, by the soul and order and proportion given it, until the end of the surah. So this is the surah that author is taking inspiration from for the text that we are now studying. He refers to other verses here and there, but this is what he put as at the very beginning for his source of inspiration. So because you said inspiration, like we studied inspiration a lot, so it is clear, at least most of us, what you mean by for who are not maybe familiar. You mean this text is the interpretation of this the ayah, right? Because when you say inspiration in a layman's term, it may sound like this is his ideas and he just got some inspiration from the text, the ayah. Yeah, so I mean, in general, since I guess majority of people in here, if not everybody, has been in here for quite some time now, author is writing a tafsir in a way that's maybe not that we get accustomed to. He is not going verse by verse, but he is reading the verses, and then this verses gives him a perspective. And as we have been trying to establish in those discussions as well, Quran is the speech of the one who is acting by action in this existence as well. So in a sense, he is walking his talk, like the creator, the one who talks, is walking his talk in the creation. And there is a perfect overlap, must exist a perfect overlap in between the two anyways. So in the light of the revelation, he is experiencing or observing the universe. And this is what has been our past 2-3 months of journey that we talked. It was a traveler going through the creation, asking for his maker, and we started from the stars, we went through the seas and rivers and trees and everything, right? Animals, humans, prophets. So we went through this journey. And as he were doing it, he were asking them, tell me about my maker. So this gives us, I guess, the perspective that the author is trying to establish here. So he is, in a sense, trying to read the book of universe under the guidance of Quranic wisdom. And as he elsewhere explains, he says, Quran reads the book of universe. Because universe is a book, but Quran reads it to you. So when Quran is read, listen, Quran says, right? So when it is read, listen to it. So Quran is reading us the book of universe. So what does it mean that I'm going to listen it? Am I going to just put the tape to Sheikh Sudais and it's going to recite it and I will listen it? I mean, sure, do that. But since this is speech, it means something. What does it mean? It is reading me. What does Quran read me? Quran is reading me the book of universe. And I am part of this universe with all my sadnesses and happinesses, successes and failures in life. So I should ask the question, why is this happening? And this is what we are asking, for example, for the past 14 months, I guess, globally. What does that mean? Why does God keep letting die? Not even letting die. Letting die is like a passive word, as if God lets them die. No, actively, the Creator is creating death in Gaza. And the victory is being given to the ones who are torturing the innocent. So what does that mean? What am I supposed to understand from that? So I am in need of Quran reading me, because otherwise I'm having a hard time understanding it. But in this case, at the very end, I am the recipient. Quran speaks to me in a way that I can understand. And this was last week's main topic. And with that, I would like to just turn the mic to the audience. Anything that stayed with you from last week, it could be a comment, it could be a question, it could be something that, this was a very important point, or it could be that, well, this we discussed, but I'm not sure if I got it. So anything of this sort from last week. Nothing. Okay.
I think the emphasis on divine descent and how, like, you really need to understand that before you dive into this topic, at least this text, because otherwise you read it and like you can go on so many wrong paths. So understanding divine descent and how this is like the writer, whatever he's explaining to you, he's trying to explain it in the terms that we understand. I think that was what stuck with me the most.
Anything else? This was an important point. Divine descent. Reading Quran as it's, I am the addressee, I am being spoken to, and Quran speaks to me in a way that I can understand. Pretty much like when you are explaining something to a child, giving examples in a way that child can understand, child can relate to in his or her world. You give the examples as such. You're not explaining maybe the reality of the thing per se, but you're making it in a way that the child can understand. Yeah.
I had a question last week about some of the beginning parts of what we read. And I'm not sure if I should ask it a little later, but so it says that he basically like made the palace for two reasons, so that he himself could behold them with his own discerning eye, and so that he could look through the view of others. So I just wanted to know why Allah would want that. Like, why would he want to see it with his own discerning eye? Like, what does he get out of it, if anything? And the same question with so that he could look through the view of others. Like, how does he do that, or why would that be necessary? Why would we need to know that he does that? Like, what's the relevance of this part?
Very good question. And if I ask back to Ahmed, or what Ahmed said, like it's a divine descent being spoken to you for your guidance, what would you think about that question? What I'm trying to say here is, what is this question trying to answer? Trying to put myself in God's shoes and from there try to understand, right? If I read these two sentences, these two statements as such, I am trying to understand God's motivation for God's purposes. Like, if I were God, why would I do this sort of a thing? If I read these two sentences as such, first, Is this possible? Second, what would be the utility of this?
Correct. So I think my question more relevant to this discussion is, how does that, like, why should I know that he did this to see it with his own discerning eye? And that's like, what does it mean to me? Like, yeah, that's the question.
What was the question initially? The author was saying that we are trying to understand the talisman of human wisdom, of the riddle of man's creation. Why am I here? This is my question. So I got into a job, and then my question is, why am I here? What am I expected of doing here? This is my question. And then they're telling me, in a way that I can understand, that your job is going to be monitored. You're not going to be let go. Everything that you do, you're going to be watched over. Your outcomes are going to be very much valued. So this is your responsibility, which means be careful about how you look, be careful about how you do your job. This is what you're responsible for. Then you say, what are you going to do with what I produce? Well, mind your business. Because the speech is a guidance for me in my terms, saying that we are speaking to you in a way that expectation from you is to work this, that way. So I'm going to read it from my perspective, not try to understand it from their perspective. And when I read a verse or a guidance which speaks from God's perspective, still I can never understand it from that perspective, what would I do? Again, our rule comes into play. This is a guidance, number one. Rule number one, this is a guidance. To whom? To me. Number two, this speech is spoken at my level of understanding. So then I am not going to try to understand it from, wow, God is trying to do this so that he is going to get this or that. No, this speech is spoken to me at my level. I should read it from my end. When the Creator says, are you not going to thank? I shall not ask, if I thank, what are you going to gain, God? Like, this is not the attitude, right? Because thankfulness is a feeling that we have. Like, if I give a cup of water to Brother Birkan, I expect him to thank me. So shall I say that, oh, God is like me, expecting a thank? Then I say, well, is he like some, I don't know, psychological issues having and not offering, really? I am going to read it from my end. What is expected of me as a human being? When my Creator says, are you not going to offer your thanks? That means I am expected of thanking. This is a speech at my level, in my terms. And when such an example is given, because Quran speaks from Creator's perspective, but I am going to read it from my perspective. I will not try to read it from God's perspective. Because if I try to do so, what happens? I am personifying the Creator. I am starting to imagine him like a human being, which from the very first point, a revelation or speech of God wouldn't be such a thing, couldn't be read as such anyways. So this is why, no matter which verse, and in here the author is, in the light of the metaphor in this surah, the very surah that we are reading, author is coming up with a story which speaks like the verses of this surah, because the verse is saying that he is looking at the sun, looking at the moon, day, night. In his example, the author says a king made a palace, put them into smaller rooms and whatnot. Like some orderly creation is being described in the surah, and author is explaining it in a way that it can become more familiar for a human being in his setup. And then he says, this king wanted to do it like this. So then if I say, oh, if I am trying to put myself in the shoes of the king and try to understand the king himself, even if the king speaks about himself, it doesn't mean anything. Like king says, I wanted this from you. This does not mean that, oh, he is meaning like these are the type of feelings passing through his heart and whatnot. This, you cannot understand that. It doesn't make any sense. He's speaking to me in my terms, which means I should rather ask the question, what does this mean to me that I am expected something? I am expected of being a careful observer and not waste my sight. And whatever I land my eyes on, I'm going to offer thanks and praise to my creator. This is expected of me. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a speech of God that we will read. It becomes a story or a mythology that we read. If that makes sense. It looks like it didn't make sense to Sister Sarah. What do you think? This might be an opinion, maybe it's a wrong thing, okay? But this is how I understand, and this is how I am convinced about. But since this is a myth, right now we are talking about the methodology. Let's try to at least, if we can, agree upon this. Otherwise, whatever we say later on, since it's going to be built on top of this, the rest is going to become meaningless. But is this methodology of reading Quran make sense? Let's ask that question. Quran is a guidance to me, telling me about things that I wouldn't otherwise be able to figure out by myself. Yet, through the guidance of Quran, I am able to confirm these realities, though. This is the distinction. If I was by myself, I wouldn't be able to figure them out. But once I am shown, I can confirm them. If that makes sense. Because human has the feeling that if you can confirm something, you can do it yourself in the first place as well. This is our impression. This is why the philosopher would say that I can find this answer by myself too. Yes.
I think we went into detail like last time on this question I had as well, but just one kind of redundancy, but I just want to have this one clarification as to I can understand everything that we are expected to pray, we are expected to know the creator. But why is the author then saying that the creator wants to be known? Like, why do we make that distinction? Why not just stop at the point that it is our duty to know our creator and learn about our creator? But why do we say, because like at that point, it's very similar to what you were saying. We jump over to the other side and then we're like understanding or trying to know as we'll understand from the perspective of God. So why do we make that distinction? Why just not stop at like that point?
Any answer for that? So if this is the conclusion that we can derive, then why don't we speak using this language rather than using this apparently metaphorical language where the creator as if becomes like a human-like actor? Just say that, oh, this is what's expected from you, human, rather than saying that God wants you to be merciful or God is merciful even. Because when we say God is merciful, nobody gets bothered by this, right? But what is it? God is merciful. If I were to say, I don't know, God is funny, you would get uneasy, right? But if I say God is merciful, you don't get uneasy. Why? Merciful is as human quality as funny. But if I were to say, oh, God is funny, it would sound like I'm attributing some human qualities to God, and you would say, oh, astaghfirullah, don't do that. God is merciful. So, which means when I say God is merciful, I'm not trying to define the creator. I'm trying to explain something from my endpoint. And Quran mentions certain divine names, but as we discussed before, like names of God limited to 99? No. So is the point being clear? Because the question is being that whatever I see there, that's why I would like to ask the question from the other side. Even the things that you see in Quran, if you would like to understand them wrong, you can 100% understand them wrong. God being merciful. Oh yeah, then God is something like my mom in steroids in terms of mercy. Is this what it is? Rather, from my end, I am the observer of mercy. And all this mercy that you see comes from Him. This is what Allah is merciful means. But how would you explain this? Like, this is a very detailed explanation. After so many years attending these discussions, we are barely touching this. Now, Quran is speaking to everyone. This is why divine names are going to be mentioned. Quran will say that God is unlike anything. There's no mithil, there's no methal for Him. Then again, the same Quran will say that وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. So, which would then sound like a contradiction. No, you need to understand first what Quran is. I guess everybody, including me, assumes that we understand what Quran is, but let's really come up with a proper definition or proper what is Quran? What do I expect from Quran? In the light of these, we expect certain outcomes from Quran. Does this make sense or no? It's being a lot of repetition, but like still by text messages, I keep getting comments, questions. Your faces also say that it's not very clear. So if you have any comments, let's continue. Otherwise, we will keep reading.
I was wondering, maybe from last week, why Nursi made this claim. And he didn't just make this claim, he really makes the claim. Like, he doesn't just say, there's a king who would like to show his beauty. He goes further. He said there's a king, just like anyone who has beauty would like to show it. And not just, he doesn't just stop there. He says he would like to see it with his own eye. And then he doesn't even stop there. He says he would like to see it through the creation's eye, like seeing himself. And of course, like, as you said, I mean, if I was thinking, oh, in God's perspective, like, how dare Nursi talk about God like he knows God? I mean, we've talked about that a lot, and that's not his approach. It's more reading. Imam Nursi must have read creation in such a way that this is the conclusion he's coming to, and he feels I feel it's such a big claim that he's also now sharing this with us. Because, like, I remember last week we were talking, I could say the purpose of life is for God to test us. I see that God is testing us, or I see that, God is teaching us, or it is for me to learn, or it is for me to grow, or this or that. I could have maybe said other stuff, but for Nursi, he's saying very, very clearly, like, the main one is for him to, like, what he witnesses is that God is what the creator wants to see his own beauty and wants us to notice that beauty as well. And what I'm getting from this as a conclusion is, in whatever action now I take with creation, according to Nursi, if I am not looking for that beauty, or if I am not seeking that beauty or acknowledging that beauty, then I am not using that creation to what its purpose is. That's the fundamental purpose of that creation. The conclusion is that it is to express his beauty, and for us to notice his beauty. That's kind of like a foundation he set, which is a pretty big claim, again, that we need to all see for ourselves. Is this really how I read creation? But this is Nursi sharing his.
So, for example, one sentence that you used there, God is looking at his own beauty and enjoying it. So when I say this, what do I mean? Like, do I imagine, like when I look at the mirror and I like just comb my hair, do I look good today? Like, again, when I read this sentence, do I read it as such? Or do I read it as an example spoken to me as a human being, as a guidance to be read from my end? Meaning that you are a creation of a manifestation of the beautiful one. So try to stay beautiful. Don't be ugly. You are expected to demonstrate beauty. You are expected to be in a way that you are being watched over and stay in a way that you're beautiful. So I need to ask this question, read it from my end. Otherwise, if I keep reading it the other way around, again, I'm going to be missing the purpose of revelation. And of course, one can say that this is not revelation, this is Nursi's words. But Nursi, like revelation is using a methodology of giving examples. This is approach of revelation. And author is saying that, okay, let me use the same argument, same method in reading the book of universe. This is what I learned from Quran, how to read the universe. So this is why speaking in this metaphorical example language, so that things that's unknown to you is going to become more familiar and known to you in your terms. So this is the thing that we need to adjust ourselves to read. I mean, when reading Nursi, yes, but also when reading Quran, we need to read it as such. Because what happens is, we are reading Quran, but if I ask the question, what did I understand from this? If I'm not going to read it from my end, then we can put a huge question mark in there too. This is why I was giving the example of, if I say God is funny, you get disturbed. But when I say God is merciful, you don't get disturbed. But the same argument that we are right now talking about applies to the term that God is merciful. And we say, well, it's a big claim. We don't say that because the Creator is speaking. But did you understand anything from this term? Let me put it this way. If I were to pull up a verse from Quran in which the Creator says, I created you so that I want to look at myself, and then I want to look at to creation through your eyes as well. What would this sentence mean to you? Let's assume I pulled up this verse from Quran, and now it's speech of God, literally. What would it mean to you? I mean, if this is the problem, still it wouldn't mean anything to you, right? So I think the discussion here is not about whether this verse appears in Quran, this same metaphor as it is appears in Quran or not. Even if it were to appear, it would mean nothing to you if you keep trying to look from God's perspective. If you look from your perspective, and the author is, I think, saying this sentence from Afala Yashkurun. Are you not going to offer your thanks? This is a verse in Quran, right? What does this mean? Are you not going to offer your thanks? The Creator is speaking to me, saying that I expect you to offer thanks. This is what it means. Right? Speaking to me in terms of what he expects from me, which is what is being said here. He wants to look at things in another word, like the way now I am reading this metaphor here, saying that he wants to see how you perceive it. In a sense, again, don't think about this sentence as speaking from God's perspective, but the same meaning is being spoken from different words, if and only if you read it from your end. This is where we are getting stuck. We are reading Quran or trying to read Quran from God's perspective. But it sounds so pious because I'm using God's words, but I understand nothing. I'm even personifying creator. So this is why this discussion's very beginning is very fundamentally about methodology. And to the extent that we lose it, it's not being a pious Muslim version. It's being, I don't understand even what point of what speech of God is. It sounds more like reducing Quran to a storybook. Like trying to be pious, I am disrespecting Quran in a sense. If that makes sense. Sister Aisha, did you get warmed up since last week? We are waiting for you to make a comment at some point, but Sister Zerin had a comment there.
I guess I just maybe want to summarize what I kind of understand from what we've discussed so far. So it seems to me, when I reflect on myself, that I come to the Quran and maybe just come to like different, interpreting different events in my life with certain assumptions. So I think maybe the hardest thing for me is admitting that I don't know. And I think maybe that's the attitude that we're supposed to come to the Quran with, that I actually don't know what this means. And I'm looking to, it could be something very simple, a simple concept like beauty and mercy that we think we understand. But I guess trying to let go of those assumptions and guesses that we make. So I was actually thinking about how we say "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim," and we often translate the rajim as like evil or accursed shaitan. But I was looking, I guess I saw that root in another portion of the Quran, and the translation was a guess. I think rajman bil ghaib, so guessing without knowledge. So I thought that was interesting that that is also sort of like a meaning that has been taken. So maybe that also maybe could reinforce the idea that we should approach the Quran without these guesses that we have about the creation and what it's supposed to be.
Jazakallah khairan. Okay. Any comments? Any other comments, questions?
I'm thinking about how we're saying whatever. I mean, it's what we've been saying, but I'm seeing in a different light. So I have a question maybe on it. So we're saying whenever we read Quran, Revelation, we can't read it in God's perspective. We need to read it so that it makes sense to us. The only way it can make sense to us is if what's being told, I can witness it. I can confirm it. So I remember when we talk about Revelation, we generally say it tells me things I cannot know or I don't know. It's a guidance for me to tell me things I don't know. Like for example, it says by the sun and its glorious splendor, by the moon as it follows it, and all these other verses or the other verses of the Quran. But the only way I can confirm it is like I do have access to that message actually. And like maybe I can look at the sun, the moon, all these different things. I do have access to that revelation for myself. Like even before God tells me that he wants to make himself known, I should be able to look at the universe and still be like, I think the creator wants to be known. So now I'm thinking revelation is just maybe opening up what we already see or what we already should know or have access to. So then I guess revelation is not just telling me something I don't know, then it's just maybe a supplemental thing on top of it, or maybe I'm taking revelation of the book as too separate from all the other revelation. In fact, all of it might be revelation, but it seems that the purpose of, I guess, when you bring the prophet into this, is to just make clear what's already there. I mean, at the end of the story, it was also saying like a book without a teacher is meaningless, but really it's not a meaningless book because we are apparently being able to read something. From our perspective, if we're able to read something, then we are getting some message. So I guess like I was a little just curious where the prophet, I guess that's what we're going to read, but where the prophet fits in then into this, like how necessary is the prophet for this? How necessary is the revelation itself for this? Is it more supplementary or is it like, yeah, I don't know if that question.
Okay, so I think this is a very good question to then read it through the story and see if it is relatable with my story, my reality. Because author is using this metaphorical language to say that this is how you are. And we will see if this is really matching my reality.
So maybe we should also remember that this is just a story. Like we cannot substitute words. Instead of king, put Allah, and whatever written in the story applies to Allah. There's no such thing as a story. It's a story to explain something, to give an example, just like Quran does. When Quran explains us something, most of the time, not in all verses, but in many verses, we see that it tells us some stories, right? It makes some the metaphors, analogies, so that we would understand something. The author is following the same methodology and setting up a stage with every component referring to something, yes, but it's still a story. Just because, for instance, he says king, you cannot say that, oh, okay, then he's talking about the throne. Where is the throne of Allah? We cannot say that, right? Although the throne of Allah is mentioned in Quran, we don't take it as the throne of the king. So one example, for instance, from Quran, when Ibrahim alayhi salam asked about the resurrection, and a metaphor is given to him about the birds and so on and so forth, right? Take the birds and whatever. So the idea is there, it's not, then the resurrection is about birds. Oh, then our souls are resurrected through birds. We don't say such things, right? We take the story there, see how it fits, what it explains, and then I understand something out of it. So the same way, we should approach this story as a story. And then at the end, he will say how this story fits to the reality. But it's still a story. Okay? So read the story as a story first. Just understand the message there. Another thing, when Imam Nursi, as a Quran scholar, Mufassir, when he uses some specific phrases, it always refers to some ideas in Quran. Okay? So you should have to think about it. For instance, when he says something like God observing something, witnessing something, there is a concept in Quran which says God is shahid, witness. Right? He witnesses everything. And then some other concepts in Quran again, witness and being the one being witnessed. When Allah make an oath about the witnesses and the ones that being witnessed. So these concepts, author takes them and put in a way that we can understand. So what he's doing here is taking one ayah, one set of ayahs that we read at the beginning, interpreting them by also referring to some other interpretations in Quran as well. So that was the reason I wanted to emphasize that it's not that author look at the creation and come up with some ideas. No, he says, this is what I understood from Quran. This is the tafsir of Quran. Like every mufassir says, this is what I understand from Quran. Okay? So the same way, Imam Nursi says, this is what I understand from Quran. Right? Here are the references. He does it implicitly to train you in something, to read Quran. Right? You should ask this question: where did he come up with this idea? Instead of trying to find some other ayahs that doesn't fit that, try to see what ayahs he's referring to. And then he says, I read these ayahs through the lens of creation. So this is like there's a difference between the two things. One, I just look at the creation and came up with some ideas about the God. This is one way. Another, there's the revelation in front of you, and you're trying to make sense of the revelation. Right? You have to make sense of the revelation. You have to understand revelation. It's your duty as a believer, right? And he says, to do that, you have to refer to the creation. Okay? This is the second. You see the difference, right, between the two? I look at the creation, came up with some ideas about the creator, versus I'm trying to understand the speech of the creator by looking at his actions.
Jazakallah khairan. Yes. Yes, Ahmed had a comment.
Right, so with the way Brother Barkan put it, I feel like, so when you read the story, it's that Imam Nursi presents, like, is it okay to, just like any story you tell your children, and then there's a moral at the end, honesty is the best policy, or something like that, that there's a message behind it. And again, the purpose is not to substitute Allah for the king in the story, but however, the way he describes jewels in the palace, I would have never seen the sun and the moon as jewels. So, and if you look at Surah Shams, it's drawing our attention towards these creations that we see as something other than jewels, let's say. So the way I'm understanding it is like, so the story is there for us to see that these things that Allah is drawing our attention towards, like there's a greater purpose to them. Like they're not just there, but they're there for you to know your creator. And that's why he uses, like, that's how I'm understanding when he says, like, every possessor of beauty and perfection wants to see and display his own perfection. So the way I'm understanding it is the greater purpose of the story is to make us understand that all these things that you see, there's a greater purpose to them. And like Allah doesn't want to be known, like there's no feeling of wanting, but it's for you to know him.
Expected to be to know.
Mhm.
From my,
Mhm.
let's put it this way.
I am expected to know. From my end, I am reading it. Because my question is, why am I here? I'm not about what is God doing right now. This is not my question. I mean, it's a nonsense question anyways, right? I'm not trying to understand relative to me, like how big is he? This is a nonsense question. I am trying to figure out, why am I here? Because I am getting old. I am dying. Why did I come here? Economy is going bad. Like things are not going good. Why am I here in these conditions? What is expected of me? So this is the talisman of man's creation. Why am I here? And as a question, as an answer to this, now I am saying that, like, if take it this way, if you were given a free holiday, okay, let's say you are doing a research you graduated, you are doing your research in a biology lab and somewhere, and then you are some company, some pharmaceutical company says, "Oh, Ahmed, how about 2 days in Key West?" What would be your question? Why? What am I expected of this? So you're asking that question. And likewise, in this life, you're asking questions. What am I expected? What's the thing that because this is the part I'm interested in. So I am made in a way that, like, bare minimum, if I were to say that, look at your eyes, Ahmed, aren't these eyes given so that it sees? So then Abdurrahman comes from there and says, where did you come up with this idea that the eyes are given to you so that it sees? Well, this is what they are for. Like, eyes are not good for hearing. They're there for seeing. How did you arrive to this conclusion? You didn't read this from anywhere. I mean, you can, by the way that they work, and when you close your eyes, there's this disturbance. You say that eyes are given so that I see. We can even move on from there. My eyes are given to see beauties that do not die, actually. Because my eyes hurt, my heart hurts, in fact, if I look at beauties in a way that it's just trying to hunt those temporary beauties. It's providing me nothing but pain. In my humanity, then I can say that these eyes are not given to just look at the beauties and then enjoy it momentarily. Because if somebody says your eyes, you're made just to enjoy the moment, I would say, no, it's contradicting my reality. They say, you know what, in page 725 of Quran, which there's no such page, but they're coming up with such a thing, right? Just enjoy the moment. This is a verse in Quran. What would you say? No way. Like, this cannot be speech of God. Because as a human being, I cannot enjoy the moment. Speech needs to be matching me. So actually, in this way, if I can properly understand myself and properly locate speech of God and existence, you could be able to say that this doesn't look like speech of God. Because it's contradicting my reality. My reality in this case, what is my reality? Is it my ego speaking here? My reality in this case means this is speech of God too. Me, I am also a speech of God. And I am given the first-hand experience of this. And this would contradict if there was a speech or claimed speech which says, enjoy the moment. This is what God commands. I would say, I cannot. As a human being, I am not meant to live momentary life. I am yearning for eternity. But when I hear a verse which claims to be a speech of God and says, you're created for eternity, I say, indeed, that's correct. I can confirm it within myself. So, like, what is our position? We are not trying to come up with a, like, Quran is not Lord of the Rings. In Lord of the Rings, when reading Lord of the Rings, what do? You just give yourself to the hands of the story. You're not, like, as long as the story is somehow self-consistent, you just enjoy the story. Am I trying to understand Quran, or would I like to look at it in a way that it's a self-consistent story within itself? Or would I like to read it as it is telling me a story which I am part of, so it has to be matching with this reality? And now it's a story that I am meant to read from my endpoint. There was a comment there.
I wouldn't want you to waste time to repeat this again, but I think I would like you to briefly explain our creator wants versus we're expected to. Like, I know you had like you talked about this extensively last week, I believe. But like with this question, it seemed like, yeah, like the creator wants, but then you reply like, oh, that's what you're expected to. And I can't remember what you were saying last week, but if you could repeat it, that'd be great.
So let me give an example with the last verse of the surah that we are starting. The surah finishes by saying, وَلَا يَخَافُ عُقْبَاهَا. So God is not going to be afraid of its outcomes. Okay? What does that mean? Like God not being afraid of outcomes of annihilating a bad guy. Because right before it was mentioning a person, the verse of that, okay, very briefly, let me give the full surah. So after talking about sun, moon, day, night, bringing it to human, how human is created, and then brings Thamud, a people, as an example again, and how prophet is brought to them, as author is doing in this story. He says, after the palace is made, a prophet comes, a teacher comes. And to the people, he says, do this, don't do that. He's explaining the purpose of the palace. And then the people, some of those people just denied the messenger in the surah, and also in parallel, this is what the story that author has written in here is saying the same thing. So he says, in there actually, prophet says, this is God's camel, she camel, and it's water, or it's drinking water. So don't mess up with it. But then they jumped over the animal and brutally killed it. And then the next verse says, God made them the like taswiyah, the same level with the earth, like annihilated them. And the last verse is, he is not going to be afraid of its outcomes. What does it mean? God is not going to be afraid of outcomes. Like, of course he wouldn't. But what does this even mean? Like if I say, well, you're doing it like this, but you're going to upset God. What does it mean for God being upset? Humans become upset. Like we are trying to not upset the creator. Sometimes we say those words. What do we mean by that? Upsetting God. Like God is going to become heartbroken. This means something about me on my end. I am interested in what this word implies on my end. Otherwise, I'm not imagining I offended God and now God is in his corner and like crying, or he's super angry and just, I don't know. This is not what I'm trying to imagine. This language, though, is very effectively conveying me how I am expected to locate myself. Like rather than using a longer sentence and saying that this is what is expected from you, if I know that it's a language that is spoken to me in my terms, this is a very economical way of saying that don't upset him, meaning don't take a stand, which is like going to make someone upset. This is the language you know about it. So I am speaking to you in this very shortcut terms, how to act. So this is on my end what I'm expected to do. But rather if I read it the other way around and try to imagine what this implies for a God, then it's nonsense. It doesn't mean anything. It cannot mean anything, actually. Because if it were to mean anything, then he wouldn't be God. Like, how did we arrive to the conclusion of God in the first place? Because I looked at the existence, there was a tree, and I said, well, nothing in this existence seems to be able to make this tree. Or I looked at a baby, and I said that a person who can get offended, who can get happy, who can get upset, is not able to do this. So its maker is not someone with any of those attributes, getting upset, getting happy, getting angry, because he's undefinable, undescribable. This is my conclusion about God, right? Yet, in his speech, he says God is merciful, or talks about God's anger. What am I supposed to understand from this? Like he's unlike anything, as Quran says, yet uses attributes that are used for humans when describing himself. Is this a contradiction? Not at all. It will be a contradiction if I read Quran literally. We are reading Quran literally, and this is a word I heard it from Dr. Ali, so I'm going to tell you where I heard it from, so that you don't think it's mine. But it was so beautiful. It says, we read creation literally as well. What does it mean to read creation literally? You see a DNA and you say it's a DNA. You see a baby and you say it's a cute baby. You read it literally. But a cute baby means something. A death means something. I see death and I say I am sad because it's death. Or I see white hair, it means something. But I say, oh, white hair, I am sad, I am dying. Literally reading what it means. But what does this white hair mean? Read it in the name of God. Since we read creation literally, I think I become Muslim, then I start reading Quran literally. Same mindset, I apply my same secular mindset to Quran. It looks now as if I am doing some religious thing, a pious thing, but what I am doing is nothing more than reading Quran literally. So I need to read Quran as a guidance to me. Number one, it's a guidance, hudan. Number two, it's tanazulatul ilahiyyat ila uqul al-bashar, divine descend to my level. It is speaking to me in my terms. These are two very golden rules. To the extent that we miss this, we are messing up what we can understand from Quran. Sometimes in the name of piety.
Maybe one quick example for your question. In Quran, we see that God says, indeed, God does not like those who go astray, for instance. Or the God does like this or does not like that. There are such ayahs, right, in Quran. So how am I going to understand that? God likes something or doesn't like something. Because it's, I would say, like a politically correct ayah, like when it says God doesn't like people going astray, it's so normal to our ears. We take it as, well, there's nothing wrong with that. Right? He doesn't like people doing wrong things. Or he likes people doing right things. So how am I going to understand that? So that's the question. So Quran is interpreting the creation for me. Right? When I see in the Quran saying that God does like or does not like this, it should be an interpretation of a creation that I see. Okay? So whatever it is referring to, it should be something in the creation. And when I look at the creation, the way it is being created, I see that the what is the word for fasad? Corruption. When I see a corruption, right, I quickly label it as something disliked. Right? That you cannot find any human being, I mean, with sane mind, he would call something corruption, but then say that, oh, I like this man. You cannot find it. You can find people who make corruption, but they will try to, I don't know, rename it. They will try to repackage it something else so that they can bear what they do. Right? This is the way the creation is. This is how I see it. So then I say, okay, the way creation is created as if the corruption is not liked. Okay? This is from my perspective. Whoever is creating things in front of me this way, right, is telling me that I created you. I am the creator. I created you and the order in the universe in a way that the corruption and the dislike always come together. Right? So when Quran says Allah does not like corruption, this is how I see in the creation. This is what I understand. When you look at the creation, my creation, he says, you will see that corruption is not liked. By whom? It's my perspective. So you will even see that in the animals as well. Like when there is a corruption in the animal world, for instance, you will see the animals fleeing away from it. It's within the order of the creation, right? The same thing. When Quran says God wants this, and Quran says uses wants a lot. Only when he wants, only when he wishes, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of verses like that. Right? When Quran says when God wants this, right? Instead of trying to understand it as I'm a religious person, that means he wants this. You're just talking nonsense then. It's not any different than saying that God has a hand. What you should be doing is try to understand what part of the creation the speaker in the Quran translates. What part of the creation that he translates. Just like in dislike, right? I say, when I look at the creation then, right, I see that I'm supposed to do something, one way or another. When I feel that, when I see that, I say, okay, that's what it means. God wants. It means in the creation, there is such an attraction for you. You will be pulled toward it, right? God wants you to do good deeds, let's say. It means between you and the good deeds, you will always observe attraction. You will say as if, this is like I'm highlighting it, as if, right? It's important. As if you are wanted to do it, or you are wanted not to do it. By whom? I don't know. This is how creation is for me. And Allah says, okay, I'm putting the name there. For you, it's always a passive sentence. You say, as if I am wanted, right? There's no, the subject there for you. Quran speaking from the God's perspective, now making it active. Says, God wants. It's just a translation of what you experience. It's not explaining something about his wills or, the inner mechanisms, whatever. It means this order is not by itself. Because some naturalists would say, oh yeah, there's such an attraction in the creation. And if they are, let's say, from social sciences, they will come up with some laws. That's what we do, right? We say there's a law of, I don't know, something. Quran says, no, there's no such thing. It is Allah doing it. That's what it means. When it put it active, it's just correcting our misunderstanding that, oh, it's happened by itself. There is such an order in the creation, right? There's such a, the force between corruption and human feelings and so on. Somebody would say, oh, there is this quantum field makes you, dislike corruption. Quran says, no, Allah dislikes. Meaning, whatever you are experiencing it there is the creation of him. It's always an interpretation of a creation. We should take it always that way.
So we can only know the creator in the way we understand the creation of the creator. Like if I know mercy through my, let's say, mother, and someone knows mercy through their father, their relationship to the creator, the way they understand how the creator is Al-Rahman would be, oh, this mercy is from Allah. But like, it's making me think that then like, as creation, can we not truly like know the creator, the asl creator, because he's the creator and we are creation, and everything that we ultimately connect to him will be in reference with creation, right?
So since today we are going with the methodology, so methodology of La ilaha illa Allah is you observe something, a thing. A thing means something that I can describe. Describe means there's a beginning, there's an end. And beginning and end doesn't only mean space-time, it means red. There's a color before red, there's a color after red. Look, red is not green, red is not yellow. So it's somewhere in between, right? Everything that we define, describe, has boundaries, right? This is how we are able to say things. Then a phenomenon happens in life, let it be life itself, let it be you, let it be a baby, and you're trying to find what makes it, and you say, none of the things, describers that I come up with is able to do that. So it's not making of nature, it's not making of laws, it's not making of water, la ilaha, none of them, as Ibrahim alayhi salam does in Quran. Yet there must be someone, which means he's undescribable. He must be undescribable. This is his description. Like only description, if you like, is undescribableness. This is why you can never describe his self, if I'm going to use a more technical term. But then this gives me as if this vacuum. I want to know him. What does it mean to know him? Because we have been talking about ma'rifatullah, knowledge of God, belief in God. And for the past 2 or 3 months, we were talking about trying to find the creator. Tell me about my maker. This was the attitude, right? But all those descriptions were based on, again, my experiences. Experience in this case means what I observe. So this is why when you hear God is merciful, God is like God's wrath, this is again going to be in terms of what I experience. I would say, oh, this is again from him. Or you will talk about your needs. There's no eternity you observe anywhere, but you have this desire for eternity. Or for example, even further, we say that God is ever living. What does that even mean? Like take Ayatul Kursi, for example. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum la ta'khudhuhu sinatun wa la nawm. God does not slumber or sleep. Like this sounds like a description. But what does it mean? God doesn't slumber or sleep. Look at this existence. Is there any moment of neglect? Like when you are driving, if you slumber when you're driving, what happens? You start going to the next lane and then you wake up and then you correct the steering wheel. That's what slumber sounds like. Do you see any change of lane existence happening in the existence? Or everything is perfectly being created within an order? So whomever is deriving this universe is not slumbering. A speech spoken to me in my terms. It doesn't mean that God is having like driving a car. No, in my terms, like if you would like to take it 1400 years ago, take it with somebody driving a horse and slumbering, however you would like to take it. At the end of the day, I am bothered by my life. My life is being driven by someone, and this someone is not slumbering, nor is he sleeping. And when I hear this, I say, I agree with that. So from my end, I am, and from the point of view of my needs, I am in need of constant watching over. I am in need of constant help. And the one who provides me doesn't sleep, doesn't slumber, means no worries. Your need is satisfied. So for my needs concerned, I know my creator. From my end, though, because from my needs point of view, I get to know my creator. It's not that I am like, if you were to, let me give a more metaphorical example, as if imagine there are two spheres or sets. One is the set of creation. The other one is the set of creator. Again, this is a metaphorical representation. Whatever I say, whatever I observe, stays in the realm of creation. I cannot pass, but that's more than enough for human. Because human gets to know their maker based on their needs.
Just a quick question. So by that, all the divine names in it and themselves, just the word Al-Rahman, it's in itself still a divine descent, right?
Even the word Ar-Rahman is going to mean something to me here and now. Because since it's a guidance, it should tell me something. And I say, what does this mean? And of course, the moment I mention this, somebody should pull up a question. I'm waiting for that question to come from somewhere. But unless the question comes, I'm not going to pull it up. But if it's a guidance, then it should make sense to me. It shouldn't be like, hand of God. I don't know what it means. If God says hand, it's hand. This defies the purpose of guidance, though. Because God talks about something which is inherently unknowable to me in any shape or form, then it simply becomes a sound for me. It's not a message for me anymore. It's just a sound because it doesn't carry any meaning to me. I'm just saying that it means something to God, but not to me. Then why am I spoken to that? Like, this is why we said Quran is a guidance. This was the first description. And the second one was spoken to me at my level. These are two very important things that we keep drilling for understanding this today's topic or past 2 weeks topic.
So in the Quran, or Allah makes references to what we consider to be the natural world, the sun, the moon, the sky, the earth. Are we constrained to interpreting it as fixed things, like specifically the sun, the moon, the sky, the earth? Or can we interpret it to be other things, right? Maybe considering that all of creation may be a sign, and that, in my own life, I might not be interacting with the physical world or natural things as much as maybe someone, 500 years ago.
Yeah, so as we start talking like this, the immediate question that raises is, what do you mean? Is then Quran is like, am I going to read every single word of Quran metaphorical? Is there nothing literal in Quran, right? And let's consider what lays behind this question. Does the question make sense? What lays behind this question is, there exists a verse in Quran which has only one meaning. This is what literal reading means, right? This is what that is. You read it, there's no other meaning. That's it. Pick up a brick, literally pick up a brick, and that's it. Nothing else is meant, right? Does there exist such a word in Quran? It depends on what you expect from speech of God. Because what that means is you can limit Quran. This is what that means. Like, the reason I'm giving an example with a single verse, with a single meaning, so that we understand the topic easier. If you want to make it 30 meaning, let it be 30, but still limited, right? Would there exist such a thing in scripture? We talked about this before, no? It was another long discussion that I talked for 50 minutes. Is Quran created or not was exactly about this. Is it limited or not? This is what it means. Or is there any single verse which is limited? Do you expect speech of God to be limited? If it was speech of a man, it would be limited. But when you say it is speech of God, by definition, it should be unlimited. So there should be infinitely many meanings from any verse. Then comes a second question. Does this mean that any meaning I derive from there, per my wishes, is a proper meaning of it? The answer is no. This is why we will start talking about prophets, because this speech is coming to you in a language which has its constructs. I cannot pull up a random verse and totally contradictory to the rules of Arabic language and how language is used in general, and also the language of Arabic and how it's used and understood by the prophet. I come up with a totally contradictory meaning. Then you will stand up and say that, like, language, you're going against the idea of language. Come on, you will stop me there. There are boundaries as such, but this doesn't mean that those boundaries are limiting the number of meanings. Still, infinitely many meanings are going to be possible. This is why within scholarly tradition, unless there exist such contradictions, what does scholars say? They say this doesn't contradict the description of God. This doesn't go against the message of Quran, Tawheed. This could be one of such meanings. This is why literal reading of Quran needs to be approached carefully. I mean, in the chat, there was an example of Zara is asking, what good are an infinite number of meanings to you? Like, there are billions of people that are on earth, and everybody is going through a different life. You have a Quran in Quran. Nibras has a Quran in Quran, specific to them. This is what infinite messages in Quran mean. So you are, again, concerned about what Quran means to you. So it means quite a bit.
The topic is like whether there are infinite or not. I guess the point here is how to read Quran.
Yeah.
One meaning or 20 doesn't matter. How to read Quran.
Yeah. And okay. And there was one quick question in the sense, does the Quran tell us not to read it literally? The first revelation, read in the name of your Lord who creates. This is telling us, the way I read this verse is, don't read existence literally, because as science, we do read universe literally. Read it in the name of your Lord means don't read it literally. Quran is teaching me how to read universe, not literally. But when it comes to Quran itself, I don't know. I think this answers the question. Yes, sorry.
I mean, I'm not trying to like pick an ayah or something, but I remember when we discussed this thing, and I remember a brother saying that there are like some ayahs, I forgot the term he used, but like according to some scholars, there are some ayahs that are, you have to take them the way they are. Like when I think about it, for example, like you just said, there are like boundaries, right? There is the language, there is the grammar, and there's also like how the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt or the Sunnah, whatever you call it, applied this or did the tafsir and the ta'wil of this, which I don't think we have all of that. Like, I mean, we don't really have what, the way they, like did that. We have from their like what we think they are like the students or tabi'in or sahaba kind of, but like we don't really have it like directly from them. That's one thing. And second, we have some stuff, for example, like about a very simple example about the wudu. In the Quran, in the ayah, it says, إِذَا قُمْتُمْ لِلصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ. It's literally telling you, if you're going to pray, get up, wash your arms until your elbows, and what's called wipe on your head and your feet. And like, I mean, people, that's what the people do when they get up to pray. They do their wudu, and they do it also because, they believe that the Prophet and his companion or family did the same. So I don't understand, like, why. And there are so many other examples, especially when it comes to, like the daily practice, or like when it talks about siyam, when you have to fast and when you have to break your fast, or what can we eat or what we can't eat. And people do take it literally. Even us, like the ones who are saying, oh, you can it can have different meanings, but we are still taking this literal meaning of the ayah. It's just hard for me to say that. Maybe the word unlimited, meaning is a bit like, doesn't feel right to me. I don't know, like, I completely understand that the Quran is what we talked about. Like, it's not a history book, especially when we talk about the stories of Prophet. It has to make sense to me. It has, to speak to my experience as a human. It's all of that. Like, I understand completely what was talked about, like how to know God how we should know God from his creation, and the Quran is the guidance to us. Like, even when the Prophet was sitting in that cave, at least that we know the story, like he needed the guidance. Like, he had something in his heart, but he still needed that guidance, that word from his creator. So I understand that, but it's just like, I think the idea of like having unlimited, which I'm sure already discussed, and I'm sure Brother Burkan will have some answer to that. Like, having unlimited meaning is a bit, I don't know. I just don't feel like, especially if I can read Arabic, and I was like, it's telling me do this. So, like, okay, some ayats would say, oh, they were given in a certain like historical context, and a certain, don't go slaughter all the, the people around you. Like, we're like, no, this was only sent, in this time, at this context. This was the event happening. That, like, it was only meant for the Prophet, for example. Sometimes we say that, right? But like some ayats, it's just like, we do them, we know the meaning, and everyone does it at a daily basis based on the literal meaning of the Quran.
So, yes, this is based on our description of Quran. If I expect speech of God to be valid and relevant only for Birkan and that's it, then that's a limited thing. It's speech of God for him only. But Quran is a guidance for everyone over centuries that came before and that will come after. And you are a different person, I'm a different person. And my creator is talking to me in my terms. So this is the distinction. If I am able to hear this verse from my creator today, like if there exists a verse in Quran which was only applying to Prophet at his time, or I guess Dua would like to pull up the verse in this case, I'm assuming, a verse about wives of prophets. Okay, this only applies to them. Then what does this verse has to do with me today? Is it part of Quran for me today? If I'm going to take it, if I expect speech of God to have such compartmentalization, which is this only applied to them and I have nothing to do today with this, or there are verses talking about Jews. I'm not a Jew at all. Why shall I bother with that? What portion of what you consider as Quran today will stay to you? This is why we start with, what do I expect from my creator? What is Quran for me? If Quran is speech of an ever-living creator, then every single word of it would apply to me today, whomever I am today, and 5 years later, whomever I become, again will talk to me. I am changing day by day. Forget about having 6 billion people. Within a 30, 40 years of life, how many different Yusuf there are? Speech is the same. But addressee is changing. So shall I say that Quran was good for me until 25, but I grow over it? Would you ever say that? If you are not able to say that, I mean, I'm not talking about out of your piety. I'm talking about literally out of your needs. If you are saying that, no, my maker's speech is always fresh and always knowing, speaking to me, the same verse. What does this mean? However many different saras there had been and will there be, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen is going to have that many different meanings for you. This is what I mean, that I expect I can never consume Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. This is what I mean by its infinite meaning. It's never ending and it can never end. And this should apply to any verse of any speech of God, let's call it this way, any verse of Quran as such. So this is my expectation from speech of God, including about the wudu. Yes, it teaches me how to take wudu, but is this the only meaning? Again, if I take it as that, so yes, this is one of the meanings of Quran. But if I reduce it and say that this is the only meaning and that's it, no. About qital, because in the chat Zara was bringing up the verses about qital. Qital had been understood at the time of Prophet and also even today as having a physical war. But what if there is no circumstances of physical war throughout your life? This portion of Quran doesn't talk to you? What do I expect from my creator? Would I say that, oh, those verses, oh, they were for the old days? What sort of a God am I imagining then? What sort of a speech of God am I imagining? So, okay, everybody's getting excited, and I'm also getting excited. Definitely there are some worries. This is why those questions are coming out. Okay, so let's now, it's not like a debate happening here. So, I am in need of guidance as a needy creature, like everybody else. But speech is one. And that speech came at a historical place, at a historical time. But it's not speech of a historical man or a historical geography. It is speech of God. Speech of God then means, as God creates me right now, that speech is as live and as fresh as it had been to them. So this is why I'm going to take it as a fresh revelation for myself here and now. But in the light of that, how am I going to read it? The point that you raised is a very good question, saying that, yes, we say we are going to read it in the light of Messenger and his family and companions and scholars. Whatever I have at my hand, I will benefit from this. I mean, the example that made sense to me about this is, if I want to benefit from something, like, for example, they say, I think nobody has yet seen particle under a microscope. Like they say electron microscope, I imagine as if it's like a giant microscope, but I heard that it's something like either they project something and then its shadow is being, like, they're not literally seeing electrons spinning, but its effect is being observed. They don't say that, well, come on, man, unless I see electron with my own eyes, I'm not going to believe in it. We don't say that. We are trying, if we really want to solve a problem, whatever tool is available, we are trying to make use of it. Like, if I am in need of making sense of what speech of God means, and this message was sent to a person before anybody else, that person is an exemplary person. And his companions have been exemplary people. Their students has been exemplary people. To the extent that I am bothered by my purpose of existence, I would say, well, whatever it takes, whatever access I have to, whatever limited time I have, maybe like I'm not going to a university or getting into a cave and studying into, I have 2 kids, I have to earn my life and this and that. Is it a once a week discussion? If this is my best, accepting my limitations, yet I would say, I will try to tap in to this legacy from somewhere. I'm not going to try to just take my intellect and try to understand the universe. I will not only take the Mus'haf and try to read it within itself. I will not only take Mus'haf and try to read it with the universe. No, whatever is available to me, I will try to put my effort. That is what I should be trying to do. Like, otherwise, if we try to see it as, well, but this is missing, that is missing, so I'm not playing, like those children trying to come with an excuse, that's not the point. Like, yes, it would be awesome, as I was telling to, let me see, no, he's not here. It would be awesome if Prophet ﷺ moves into Philadelphia tomorrow and we rent a house around his and day and night just watch him, observe him. That would be awesome. But practically, where am I? And we are not in a very poor position either. Like, may Allah be pleased with all those scholars. They put a lot of effort day and night. that they are saving us from the pain of going through the same thing, because we are not able to. If only we could, but we are not able to. Then rather than me arrogantly trying to, I mean, I'm not talking about you, but rather than me arrogantly trying to say, well, this guy doesn't know anything, that guy doesn't know anything, I don't know anything. And to the extent that I can, let me try to benefit from this guy. Yes, this guy is going to have something missing, but look at what he has and what you can benefit from this guy. And then for the missing part in here, look for another one who has this part fulfilled. This is how I'm going to see the picture of Prophet ﷺ, by looking at those live examples. But sometimes we get the impression that, oh, when we talk about Prophet, we mean narrations, hadith. And then you will pull up a hadith, and another scholar will say, oh, you know, I'm not sure about this hadith. Then we will say, okay, let's go to Bukhari and Muslim. Now we are reducing the number of hadith quite a bit, because they were so scrutinizing it, and they are just saying that these are the ones that we are so sure about. And then tomorrow we will come up with another scholar which says, you know what, those 25 hadith in Bukhari, I'm not sure if they're hadith sahih and whatnot. So then you would say, well, come on, man. It's better I'm not even touching any one of them. If this becomes my attitude, then I would benefit from nothing. So the question is, why am I doing this in the first place? Why am I coming to this discussion in the first place? Why am I trying to read Quran in the first place? If it is for coming up with a self-consistent, bulletproof, intellectual explanation for existence, I would say don't bother. Don't waste your life. But if it is rather, I am dying, generally we are not worried too much about our death, but my parents are dying, or innocent children are dying. Whatever is happening in there which bothers you, how am I going to make sense of that? Or 5 days of my 7 days are just, in the morning, I go to the work, I come back, go to the work, come back, wasting my life for nothing. If you're bothered by this, then try to find an answer to this. Otherwise, honestly, there's no point of having any of these discussions. It's pointless. If it gets to that point, though, then I would say whatever grain of light I can find in there, I will do it. Because then it makes sense. I mean, the example, although it's not, well, we are over time already. The example that makes sense to me about this one is when we were having those brain images, it's a low resolution grayscale image that you get. I mean, the guy has some issues in their brain, and they get into an MR machine, and it gives you a very low resolution brain image. You wouldn't say that, well, come on, man, are you going to make a surgery of me based on this grayscale image? No, of course you wouldn't do that. What's the alternative? Opening up the skull, taking half of your brain because the tumor is at the center, take it out. Once you take it out, you cannot put it back. You say, well, this is the best we have at hand, so you better use it. So about prophetic history, whatever you have in your hand, you would say that this is a treasure rather than trying to poke holes into it. Even if a grain of truth is somewhere, you would say, I will try to mine it rather than trying to throw it away. Your attitude will change. So I don't know. Sometimes we are getting too excited, I guess. Again, I'm talking general because I kept hearing a lot of other stuff on the side than this discussion. So many of the answers given here were for offline questions today. So like, oh, this hadith is like this, that narration was like that and whatnot. Come on, what is your purpose when addressing any one of those? Any hadith, any verse. If you would like to make humazat lumaza, as we have been studying for the past 2 weeks at Penn, if I'm going to gossip about truth as such, but not talk about how it touches me, then what am I doing? This is not human. This is not the purpose of human. So we are quite late. Any concluding remarks? جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.